Hello and welcome to April, National Pet First Aid Awareness Month. And I wanted to do some slides for you today. I was having a little trouble screen sharing, so we'll be working on that. But I hope you guys will all find me now, so I'll kind of stall for a few moments and hope you can get here, because every day is something pet paw parents need to be aware of. With Pet First Aid and how we can help our pets. But April is the month that we bring special attention to it. So I'm here to tell you why you need to know Pet First Aid and CPR if you don't, why you should regularly brush up on your skills if you already know it, and really convince you that we just need to be the eyes and ears and the advocates for our furry and finned and scaled best friends 24/7, because life happens and we can't keep them in a plastic bubble. We have to let our pets live their lives, but we want to be there to help them at the time an illness or injury strikes before we can even get them to veterinary care. And in a nutshell, that is what Pet First Aid is. It is the first thing in a line of treatment that we do when a dog or cat in particular is injured or ill. And I'm going to kind of confine my talk today to dogs and cats. But at the end, I will share with you some information about all the other species and where you can learn more as well. But yes, it's the first thing we do in a line of treatment. When we were a bit younger and fell off the swing set and skinned up our knee, mom or dad washed it off, put a bandage and a kiss on it, and pretty much let us go about our business as long as we didn't pick at the scab or it didn't become infected. Their first aid was the wound cleaning and the observing to see that it healed. When we got a little older and more adventurous and fell off a bike or a skateboard and possibly even broke our arm or at least sprained it, our parents then may have grabbed a scarf out of the drawer or ripped up a sheet, made a temporary sling. Maybe they went to the freezer and grabbed some ice or a bag of frozen mixed vegetables to put on it. Those bags of frozen vegetables really work well as ice packs. But what they were trying to do was alleviate some of the pain and prevent us from, injuring it more by putting it in a sling. But most likely their next step was to put us in the car and take us right to the doctor or the hospital to have it x-rayed and then possibly put in a professional cast or a sling. So that time their first aid was to prevent that further injury and alleviate some of the pain, but then to get us the medical attention we needed. Well, the same thing happens with our furry children. We sometimes are going to fix them up, watch them, and make sure they get better. Other times we're going to prevent further injury and try to diminish some of that pain, but get them to that competent professional veterinary help that they need. So that's what first aid is all about, taking care of those initial things and being the beginning in that line of treatment for our pets. Now, veterinarians are the experts, but even if we cohabitate with a veterinarian, we're probably not lucky enough to have one, attached to our hip 24/7. So it's important we know what to do at the time of injury to help our furry best friends. Pet First Aid is the way to do that. No matter what species we're dealing with, there are basically 3 emergency situations, and they all revolve around this portion of the body, the heart and the lungs. In the first scenario, you may come across a dog who isn't feeling his best, but he is breathing and does have a pulse. Maybe you just noticed a puddle of vomit in the corner. Maybe you noticed a dog with a swollen snout from a bee sting. Maybe Kitty jumped up on the stove after you removed the tea kettle and unfortunately now has burnt paws. The dog or the cat in this case do have a pulse and they are breathing, but something isn't quite right. So we're going to perform Pet First Aid. In the second and obviously more critical scenario, the animal isn't breathing. This could be due to drowning, to poisoning, to electrocution, a plethora of ailments. The animal isn't breathing. We need to get oxygen into their lungs and pump their lungs. So what we're going to need to do is perform rescue breathing, or what I like to refer to as mouth to snout resuscitation. And in the third, obviously most critical scenario, not only is the animal not breathing, he doesn't have a pulse. We need to perform CPR, or more correctly, CPCR. That second C has been added in recent years to stand for cerebral, the brain. And although protocol that you may have learned 3, 4, 5 years ago still pretty much works, like with everything in life, we've learned more effective ways to do things, and we have proved upon it. And what the goal of CPCR is to actually get more blood and oxygen to the brain. We want to make sure that precious little cat or dog is the same animal they were before the incident happened, meaning we retained as many brain cells as possible. So it's so important to, learn these skills and preferably practice them, in front of an instructor that can really make sure you have the correct hand positions, are breathing appropriately, and doing everything you could. Even though it was a few years ago that we changed from CPR to CPCR, just in the last year or two, some of the hand position protocol has changed. So it's so important as pet parents that we just always keep up with the latest techniques so that our furry kids have the best chances of survival. Now, by knowing first aid, you can, in these cases of CPR, literally be the pump that the heart can't be at that moment in time. Our job as pet first aiders isn't to diagnose an injury or illness. That's for the veterinarians who have gone to years of school and can hopefully fix those things. What we want to do is to jump to the task at the moment an illness or injury happens, prevent further injury, hopefully reduce pain and suffering, and get our pet to prompt veterinary care. But by doing first aid before we get to the veterinarian, we can diminish blood loss if we know how to properly stop bleeding. We can prevent infection from getting in if we know how to bandage a wound. And I have some great tricks for you with bandaging because, ears and the wiggly ends of our pets can be very difficult. So, that's something I'd love to teach you in a first aid class. If we know how to lower a pet's body temperature from heat stroke, we can prevent his brain from swelling. And a huge problem with heat stroke besides the brain is the whole gastrointestinal system. The colon, the liver, and the kidneys literally start to cook. So even if you've gotten your pet's body temperature down, it's very often advisable to have him checked out by a veterinarian because some of those ill effects don't show up for 24 hours after the injury has happened. If you learn how to alleviate choking, you can prevent your pet from going unconscious. And I will say, of all of the pet first aid techniques I teach in class, alleviating choking is the one that more students have promptly used after class, have really been able to jump to the task and help a pet in need. Animals put things in their mouths that they shouldn't. They eat too fast. They swallow big chunks, and choking does occur. So it's wonderful to be able to catch that in the moment before the pet goes unconscious, because once they're unconscious, then we're going to be checking for respiration and pulse, and if we don't have that, we're going to have to jump right to it and deliver rescue breathing and CPR as a means to keep them alive until we can get to veterinary care. Now, when you're doing CPR, whether it's for a human or an animal, realize it's not a cure in itself. By doing CPR, you haven't stopped bleeding. You haven't cured a disease. You haven't really reactivated the heart, so to speak. What you are doing is being the pump that for in that moment of time your dog or cat's heart can't be. You're actually squeezing the blood out of the heart and releasing so it can flow around and go back in the other chamber. Squeeze and release so it can flow around and go back. By doing this, though, you're keeping the oxygen, that life-giving oxygen and blood, circulating to the tissues of the body and keeping the pet alive until you can get to that veterinarian who hopefully can cure the disease, who can give the antidote for poison, can, perform the surgery or do whatever is needed to save the life of your precious pet. But without you keeping them alive until you get to veterinary help, our veterinarians aren't magic workers. They can't bring animals back from the dead. So it really, really behooves you to be able to learn these life-saving skills. I had a student in Ventura, California. Her name was Shirley, and she had a 9-year-old Doberman named Rocco. And every Sunday, Shirley and Rocco would love to take a run along the beach. Well, one Sunday, not too long after she had taken my class, when they got home, Rocco collapsed on the driveway. Shirley, of course, in distress, dropped to her knees, began to talk to Rocco, realized he wasn't breathing, didn't have a pulse, so she quickly began rescue breathing and CPR. Very quickly, Rocco started to cough and pant. Yay! But just as quickly, he stopped again. So Shirley continued, and you can imagine when it's your own pet, you're not keeping track on a stopwatch. But she continued doing rescue breathing and CPR, she guesses, for about 3 minutes. Totally resuscitated Rocco, but knew that that wasn't the end of the game. Just because a dog gets up, wags his tail, and licks your face doesn't mean he's okay. So she got Rocco right in the car. They went to the animal specialty group nearby, and they kept Rocco for the day. Rocco was diagnosed with a heart murmur and was sent home on medication. And when Shirley collapsed on her sofa that night after the trauma and the drama of the day, out of the corner of her eye, she saw Rocco running up and down her hall with a pair of socks in his mouth, having the time of his life. This was a dog she could have lost that morning on her driveway if she hadn't acted calmly and effectively to give him the help he needed. I had another student in Redondo Beach, California, and I'll never forget the letter she wrote me afterwards because of the great embellishments, but the impact and the drama that took place. It was literally, I had taught this class on a Thursday night, and I think it was on Sunday morning that I had gotten the email, and I just burst into happy tears after I got a few lines down. She wrote me, "I was driving along the bluffs of Palos Verdes, admiring houses I hoped I would one day own, when I saw a dog hanging from a balcony." She said she slammed on the brakes, parked the car, went running to the door, knock, knock, knock on the door. The woman answered and had no idea. She'd put her little dog out on his leash on the balcony, but the dog had jumped over the railing. Well, my student said, I just took a pet first aid class, can I help? And they carefully lifted the lifeless body of the dog over the railing. And my student began administering rescue breathing and CPR. Being that it was in Palos Verdes, California, a very affluent area, they were very lucky. They were able to get vet techs to come to the house. They put oxygen on the dog and whisked him off to, the hospital. He stayed there for several days, but he was able to come home, his happy, waggy, helpful, healthy self. Veterinarians feel that maybe at some point in time he may suffer seizures. Nobody knows how long he was unconscious like that. But it's been several years now, and the dog is doing great because my student was there in the time it was needed. So I know all of us hope we never, ever have to perform these life-saving skills. But not only is it important to learn the skills and techniques and have the tools on hand you need, but by going through a class, it really helps you build the confidence to jump to the task when it's needed. I know any of us can read a book or we can watch a video and we think we know what to do, but there's nothing like role playing, even with stuffed animals, to practice with. Because, obviously some of these we don't want to actually compress or do rescue breathing on an animal until he needs it. But by practicing even on a stuffed animal or just placing your hands on your own pet without compressing, it really makes a brain-to-hand connection, and you're much more likely to go on autopilot should the need arise. So I really, really encourage all of you to learn animal life-saving skills and practice them regularly. Because as we've all learned throughout life, if you don't lose it, if you don't use it, you lose it. And you really want to be ready to, perform when your pets need you most. I do have once a month live teleconferences where I can see you, you can see me, you can see my slides and my videos, and we go through a 4-hour class after we get a certificate, and you can really learn these animal life-saving skills. I, still travel and do conferences in different areas, but this is a great way to do it from the luxury of your home. I've had a few pet sitters lately, especially as we were going through flu season, who, would have had to cancel if it was a class, in a location. And because we were doing this online from the comfort of their home, they were able to tune in, even not feeling their best, and brush up on skills and, feel confident that they could react when the time is right. I've all talked to you about my quick find pocket guides before for dogs and cats, and those are available at quickfindbooks.com in both the print and the e-version. And I'm excited, paws and fingers crossed, that it looks like finally this summer the Pet Safety Bible will be available. It's 260-something pages in an 8x10 format, so you know there's a lot of stuff in there, and that will be out and available. But if you have species other than dogs and cats, I hope you'd be interested in the Pet Safety Crusaders My Pet Me Guide to Disaster Paw Preparedness. Not only will it get you ready for earthquakes and tornadoes and civil unrest, fires and chemical explosions and anything that can happen in life, and really that's getting us humans ready too. But additionally, in the back, I've got first aid for amphibians and reptiles, birds, fish, of course, dogs and cats, humans, large animals, rabbits, and pocket pets. So that could help you bone up on some of the details you need as well. But in the meantime, I'd like to leave you with just a few things that you can go check on your dog or cat right now. The first one would be to check his respiration or breathing. And you can just watch your pet, observe that rise and fall of the chest. Because just like us, when they inhale and exhale, there's a movement to the chest. So you can see that rise and fall. But if they're laying on their side, just gently place your hand on the chest, feeling for that rise and fall as they inhale and exhale. Medium to large dogs breathe 10 to 30 breaths per minute. Our smaller friends, cats and smaller dogs, it's 20 to 40 breaths per minute. The key with respiration and with pulse, or the rhythm of the blood flowing through the artery, is this. The bigger and older the animal, the slower they breathe and the slower their heart rate. The smaller and younger the animal, the faster those two things are. So just remember, puppies and kittens with an unlimited amount of energy bouncing off the walls, they're going to breathe faster and they're going to have a faster heart rate than our old Mastiff plodding along. But also, think about it in terms of one particular species. Take a Labrador Retriever, for instance. He's relatively small as a puppy, and he's certainly young and adorable. But as he gets older, he's going to get bigger and older. So as the years go by, both his breathing and pulse will slow down. So you always want to know what is normal for your pet. Now, all of you joining in today, if you were going to check your own pulse, I think you would probably give me two answers as to where the best place for it is to tune in. Check at your wrist or at the carotid artery. Well, the best place on our dogs and cats is the femoral artery. Think of the big femur bone in the hind leg. It's basically like in the groin. That's where you want to check for a pulse. You can certainly palpate it, in different areas as well, down towards the wrist, closer to the paws. But up in that hind leg in the groin, that's a big meaty part of the body. So it's a very large artery supplying blood to the animal. Just don't ever use your thumb. You'll get your own pulse. And, it just depends on a lot of us. A lot of us use our index finger so much that it's kind of desensitized. So some people do better using, your middle or your pinky fingers, just because they're a little bit more sensitive. But please do try to find the pulse on your pet. If it's a smaller dog or a cat or a very lean pet, you can also just cup your hand behind the front legs, feeling the chest. That way what you'll actually be feeling is the heartbeat, because the heart beats and then it sends the blood through the arteries or pulses it through the arteries. So no matter whether you're checking the heartbeat or the pulse, it should be the same rhythm, the same tempo. So those are two really important tips to know about the condition of your pet. And I do want to share one other vital with you. It's probably something you're least familiar with, but it really is a huge indicator in the health of your pet. And that's what we call capillary refill time, or in medical terms, CRT. It's just such an important thing to know. And you've probably been checking in on yourself since you were a kid. Have you ever pressed on your nail bed, turned it white, and then released the pressure to see how quickly the pink would come back if you don't have your colored nail polish on today? Well, you were checking your CRT, how quickly the capillary refills after the pressure has been released. It's kind of a layperson's way of checking circulation, or the more medical term, perfusion. What I like to think of the capillaries as they're the smallest vessels containing blood and oxygen in our body. They're very often in the extremities and the mucous membranes. Think about it the last time you went to a movie theater, for instance, and it was a chilly room. Some of you I'm seeing I've got a lot of people, family and friends here from New York watching today, so you may still be chilly right now. But if you're in a cold room, what's most likely to get cold first? Your nose, your fingers, your toes, the extremities of our body. So what happens? Our bodies, in their infinite wisdom, since us, dogs and cats, are all warm-blooded creatures, we're not cold-blooded like our amphibian and reptile friends, our bodies self-regulate. So what they do is they literally zap some of the blood and oxygen from our fingertips to our core to make sure our major organs and tissues have the blood and oxygen they need. If I lose a fingertip to frostbite, I'm going to be okay. But if my liver freezes up, I'm in a whole heap of a lot of trouble. So this is just something our bodies do without really thinking about it, kind of, to preserve us, to keep us alive. So when we're checking capillary refill, if we're getting a good blood flow to the tip of our fingers, all systems are really go. But if it's taking a little bit longer for that blood to get to those extremities, well, then maybe something isn't quite right and we might need some medical care. Same goes for our furry friends here. But checking at their fingertips or their nail beds just doesn't do the job. So what we have to do is come to a mucous membrane, meaning the gums. We lift the lip and press on the gum right above the teeth until we turn it white or lighten it. And when we release that pressure, we want to see that bubblegum pink color come back in 2 seconds or less. If it takes longer than 2 seconds, we fear the animal might be in shock. Shock is a life-threatening condition in which the body isn't getting enough blood or oxygen, so we need to get to veterinary help. But if the color comes back in 2 seconds or less, we feel the pet's good to go. Gum color is so important in our pets. Like I said, we generally strive for that bubblegum pink, but go look in your pet's mouth. Some pets have splotchy gums. They're pink with some dark spots. Some have very dark gums altogether. Some cats, chows, black Labradors, different types of pets. So know what is normal for your pet. If they are dark, you can still press on them because by doing so, you'll blanch the color out. And when you release that pressure, the normal color should come back. But what I like doing with a dark gum pet is actually just pulling down the lower eyelid. And if you see pink in there, he's good to go. But if you see a different color in either the gums or in the eyelids, and let me explain some of those, you need veterinary care. Obviously, if he's pale, he's got either anemia or he's not getting the blood in the places he needs it. We need veterinary help. If they're kind of blue or gray, again, we're not diagnosing. We're not the veterinarian, but most likely with the blue, he's not getting enough oxygen. This may be an animal you've actually been giving rescue breathing to. Another color you may see is actually yellow, almost as yellow as the sign behind me. And that can either be liver toxicity or zinc toxicity, Z-I-N-C, meaning your pet either is having problems with his liver or he has swallowed something like pennies or SPF or diaper rash ointment, anything that might have zinc in it, and it's poisoning his system. So I hope I've been able to impress upon you in these few minutes today the importance of learning pet first aid and CPR. It can truly save a life. But even when we're not talking about life-threatening conditions, there are so many things in a class that you can learn that can really enhance your pet's life. And a huge part of it isn't always just jumping to the task, but it's also knowing the things that can happen and trying to prevent them from happening in the first place. So I thank all of you for tuning in. We've had a great group here. Thank you, Paul and Barbara and Cheryl and Casey and Diana. And there's some more of you on here I can't even see right now. But it was great having you spend a few minutes with me today. Know I'm going to be talking about, Elaine, hello. I'm going to be talking about Pet First Aid forever because it's what I do. And I've just been honored to have taught 15,000 humans personally and hopefully millions more by the television performances I've been lucky enough, to share these life-saving skills on. So Hug your pets, stay in the know with them at least once a week. Really give them a head to tail check over, feeling for lumps and bumps, looking at the condition of the coat, looking in the eyes, making sure nothing's caught in the pads of the feet. And, you can just really learn to play pet detective and get your pet to the vet when the small thing happens before it becomes a nightmare. So happy Pet First Aid Awareness Month. I thank you all for loving the animals in your life and for wanting to be the best pet parents you can. I will see you, today's Thursday, so I will see you Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern with more tips. But until then, have an awesome possum week. Bye-bye for now.